Good morning, everyone. This is Karen Matzo here, and I'm happy to have Christopher Hobson with us today, and Ann Mordecai will be with us as well. Welcome to the Effective Strategies and Approaches for Paraeducators to Support Children During Virtual Learning. That's a mouthful. And along with that theme, we have a lot of people. So we have over 1,000 folks that are interested in this webinar today. And I just wanted to say that GoToWebinar only allows us to host 1,000 people. So there's going to be a bunch of people that can't log on today, and we're sad about that, but there is a recording and everyone has access to the certificates, the recording, all of the handouts from the webinar today. So it should be fine. And so welcome everybody.
Welcome.
I am going to
click.
All right. So today we have, Anne, did you wave to the folks
I
at home?
waved. Hello. You can probably tell who's Anne and who's Christopher.
So Anne is a colleague and the director of assessment and all things math in our organization, Demonstrated Success. So thank you for joining us today, Anne. Our president, Mike, is in the background, just to make sure we have no technical issues since we have so many people on today. So Mike, just say hi if you're there.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Karen. I'm the Director of Professional Development. I've been enjoying my children this week and last week. Not much of those other things have I been enjoying, obviously. And Christopher Hobson, welcome. We're happy to have you today. Chris is the founder of Parapotential, which is an organization that supports paraprofessionals and offers professional development for paras. He was a classroom teacher for many years, and now he serves, and for about the last 8 years, he has served as a paraeducator in elementary school and high school. And I got to know Chris actually at the rock climbing gym in Dover. And he also is an avid mountain unicycler, which I find absolutely heroic. So welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So I'm actually going to turn off my camcorder now so that folks can see the full screen, and I think we all will. Okay. In addition to thanking the folks that are here today, I really want to thank the New Hampshire Department of Education, who has supported us to offer these webinars for you. And particularly Caitlin Davis is the head of the department that is supporting us in doing this. So thank you very much. And I want to thank all of you that are on this webinar. It is such a treat for the last couple weeks to get to know so many educators virtually, because we have thousands of educators that are logging in to learn new things, to support their students. And the message that we have heard is that people are working so hard. This is such a stretch out of everyone's comfort zone, and that people are working longer days and longer hours just to provide support to their students at this time. And we've had a lot of teachers come forward and share their best practices for some of our webinars. And I am so wowed and so appreciative and sort of awed by the sense of unity that I feel has evolved in our profession over this time. Thank you all for your patience with us during the webinar. Thank you all for your patience with these new transitions. And on a logistical note, everyone on the webinar is muted. We have 1,000 people on the webinar, so that's a lot of dogs and babies and breakfast conversations that we could overhear. So we have everyone always comes on muted. At the end, I will try to open up and people can raise their hands. And if you raise your hand on the control panel to your right or to your left or wherever it is on your screen, I will try to unmute individuals so they can actually contribute and talk directly to the group. The other thing is, most important, is that on your control panel, there is a place for questions. And I'm seeing some fun comments too. Mountain unicycling. I encourage you to write in and ask all of your questions. Some of you, Anne, will you address the folks that are having trouble with the auditory?
I am doing that. Yep.
And can you type in the information to chat for phone?
Yeah, the phone number, and I will do that.
Everything, and send it to all. Okay,
yep.
Great. What else can I tell you? There's some handouts at the bottom of your control panel. Sometimes people have trouble finding them, but I want you, they're at the bottom. Four of the handouts that we are sharing today are shared with you down there, and you can download them. Also, the certificate for participation is also down there. I also want you all to know that following the webinar, you will get an email that will give you a link to a public Google Drive that you can all access that will also have the certificate, all of the handouts I attached, and more handouts. So you will all be getting that. In addition, this webinar is recorded, and everyone that has logged on, everyone that has tried to log on, and everyone that registered but planned to watch the recording, everyone will get the same message that sends you access to the recording and access to all of the handouts and the PowerPoint with all the links and everything. Okay, so we're trying to make sure that we maximize access to all of these resources over the last couple weeks. Okay. I wanted to just let you know that the New Hampshire Department of Ed has very quickly created a resource for you on their site, newhampshireLearnsRemotely.com, and there's a lot of information that you will need on there, and I encourage you to go to that site and check up and read about the policies and the resources that New Hampshire is offering, including there's a calendar of all of the PD that's being offered through the New Hampshire Department of Education at this time. Today's agenda. So these are the topics that Chris and I will be talking about today. We'll talk about relationship building, the new roles for paras, improved communication, staying organized, maximizing the learning time you have with students, and then at the very end, just put in a plug for fostering peace of mind for you and for your students. So that's what we will be covering today. And the very first thing that we'll talk about is relationship building, and I'm going to hand off to Chris and let him start.
Yeah, this is a whole new model for in education, and a very stressful time. There are lots and lots of questions about how things work and how they don't. It's something that we are trying to embrace as educators, but it builds an opportunity for us. And so one of them is to build relationships with our students and our students' families. We're using live video with kids and their parents, and sometimes sisters and dogs walking through. Some people are doing one-on-one video chats with their students as they're providing services. Others are doing small groups, and there are a number of formats and programs that you can use, including Zoom and GoToMeeting, that helps with that. A lot of times people are communicating on the phone, and this is a whole new realm for paras. Paras often are encouraged. A lot of parents are encouraged to go through the case managers instead of paras, and now paras are right in these kids' homes. And so we also sometimes have confidentiality issues that we have to think about when we call families on the phone and so forth. And then speaking of confidentiality, a really fun thing to do to help break the ice with kids and their families is to take your laptop with you and walk around and show them your home and encourage them to do the same to you. It really kind of kind of opens up doors and breaks down barriers because suddenly it's real and we are sharing our lives together.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I just want to respond to a couple of comments from the question box. So I think that the policies in districts are different at this point. When we were preparing for this webinar, and as I've spoken to different special education paras and special education teachers, the policy in different districts with regard to calling on the phone has been varied. For many, the phone is the only way, for many families, the phone sometimes is the only way right now to communicate. And in some districts, the para is the person that's calling families on the phone and talking to and making that connection. So, and then in other districts, I think that they're interpreting FERPA in a different way and disallowing that. So I just want to state that as a variation in what's happening right now. And
I even had the opportunity to work with a student on the phone because their computer wasn't working. So we did all our video conferencing on the phone, and the student was showing me their work from their phone onto my computer. It was very challenging, but it works, and that was so cool.
It's really hard because we need to balance engaging our kids and supporting them. These are hard decisions to make. My instinct as an educator and just the way that I am is to connect with the kids any way possible at this point because they are potentially feeling isolated in their homes. But you definitely have to check with your district to see what is permissible. I think one thing that we need to just also address is that bullet in the second bullet. If you are talking to families on the phone or you are emailing directly with parents and or students more frequently, you want to set up and ask them explicitly how often they want to check in with you, right? It might be every other day, it might be once a week. You know, we don't want to, families are going through a hard time right now. They have their kids home, people are trying to work, right? The last thing we want to do is, you know, for them to incur more strife and stress. So I think setting up and being open and setting up a system with your families is a great idea. And just interrupt if there's any questions. So the next topic we wanted to talk about was some new support roles for paras. And I'm just going to, we'll start with a few of them right now. Chris, do you want to start?
Sure. A lot of my work right now is one-on-one, supporting for students that are part of a caseload, and it's been easiest to do it one-on-one. We haven't had much opportunity since different kids are at different levels and different different opportunities to get further in the curriculum, the daily curriculum, that we haven't done much small group support yet. But I do know that some teachers are and some paraeducators are. So I think it's an ideal situation if that can be made to happen, by all means. A lot of paras are also creating materials for their teachers to support kids learning at this time. I know a couple of paras who have created some scheduling documents and that kind of thing that they are using with their classroom teacher to make sure kids are all on track, and that's important.
I spoke to a special education teacher who was designing virtual curriculum for 6 different groups of kids, and so she, you know, really eager to do a good job, but felt like she didn't have time to prep all the materials, so she reached out to her paraprofessional, and her classroom paraprofessional is helping her to create those materials for students, and she's extraordinarily appreciative of that. And as we said earlier, you know, in some districts, paraprofessionals are connecting with families, making sure they're okay. Some paraprofessionals are creating videos to accompany written directions for students with reading issues. So if the classroom teacher, let's say, is working on Google Classroom and sending out written directions, if you work with a small group or an individual, right, that has reading issues, one thing you can do is to create short videos to explain things so that the student can get that information auditorily. This was a great one that I spoke to a paraprofessional the other day. I loved this. So, you know, in our homes, they're much more conducive to doing some project-based learning. The kids are home. You know, as I was saying in an earlier webinar, we want to go with the grain of learning right now and what the kids, and sort of capitalize on the kids' interests. So the paraprofessionals that work in your building have all sorts of secret talents that they can share with students. So, you know, setting up a live Zoom meeting or a Google Meets and baking with students. You know, if a small group of kids, you have 5 kids, it could be kids that are working on life skills. It could be kids that aren't, you know, doing the math of baking, the doubling, the quartering, the halving, and doing that project together. Or quilting. I was speaking with a paraprofessional who was doing quilting with a group of kids, and the same thing, the same math skills, building something. I don't know how to build anything, but you know, building also is an activity that provides for lots of reading directions, you know, natural math opportunities. And I feel that at this time, we should encourage everyone to bring their alternative skill sets to the forefront and share with kids, because these are new times that are open for innovation. And connecting with kids at this point and offering something that is inspiring and engaging with them to them is of prime importance right now.
Yeah, and Karen, I think often about kids that I've supported in industrial art, in music, in science labs, in culinary arts and so forth, and the technology arts. And video is a great way to do that.
I'm just looking really quickly. Jill asked if there's a way to protect your phone number. And there definitely is. There's several different technologies that allow you to have an independent phone number. I can't think of the names off the top of my head, but the other thing that we do at the end of these webinars is we will take all of your questions and go through them and provide answers to every single one that we know the answer for, and then upload it to the file, that public file. So we will do the research for your questions and share that with you afterwards. But there are definitely techniques to independent
Karen,
phone
we're
line.
getting tons of people that are telling us if you dial *67, it blocks your phone number. We got like 20 of them. So
Okay,
that's
thanks.
good. Must
That's
work.
great.
Everybody's saying it. Yeah.
That's
Thank you,
great.
everybody.
Sounds like something from my adolescence when we used to make phony phone calls.
Yeah,
Not
I
that
know.
I never
And just
did
to
that.
clarify, Ann Karen, you dial *67 and then you just dial the number you want right after that.
Okay. Good to
Thanks,
know.
Mike. There's so many great questions here. If parents start sending you friend requests on social media, what should your response be? Chris, do you want to speak to that? I have an immediate response,
I
but
do. I try to avoid doing that at all costs. And so I would either dismiss the invitation and then email them. I've had parents ask me on the street, hey, can we be friends on Facebook? And I just say, you know, at another time, in another place, I would, but I really can't right now, just for confidentiality purposes. And everyone that I've said it to has said, I understand. So I would just politely refuse.
yeah, I would too. And I also want to go back because some people have had a reaction to sharing our homes with our students. You know, it's all personal choice. It's all what you're comfortable with,
Right.
and what how how you feel. So there's no pressure to do that. I think that Chris and I both think it's consistent with who we are, that it's an easy thing for us. But if it's not a comfortable thing, then that's no big deal.
And I know a number of educators who are friends with their students' parents. So whatever works for each person, I guess you're right.
All right, let's keep going. So we're going to talk a little bit about the communication between classroom teachers, case managers, service providers, and paraprofessionals. And this is sort of an outline of the next few slides. I am of the feeling that communication between the team of people that works with students that are in need is absolutely foundational right now. So I want to spend some time here and talk about some of the different ways that we are doing this. Wow, there's so many things that people are contributing, and I wish that we could get to all of them. But
And we also, there's a whole issue of finding a balance between too much communication and not enough communication. I know that many districts are working hard to try to streamline the emailing that goes out, because it's just, people are inundated with emails that they're responding to on a daily basis, and email offering resources and that kind of thing. And those are all well-intentioned, but a lot of times it gets overwhelming. Paras and classroom teachers, and especially educators, case managers and coordinators, they're spending a lot of their day answering emails and responding to them instead of really doing what they want to do, which is working with children and supporting their needs.
thanks, Chris. I posted this calendar because, as just really a symbol, you can create any calendar that you want. But my suggestion to the teams of classroom teachers and paraeducators and case managers is that you have a calendar like this that you share, and that every student that you work with that has specific needs, their day is going to be filled with a lot of different people. So there's the classroom instruction, there's any speech or OT that I'm sure the speech and OT folks are trying to include right now. There is the paraprofessional support time, which for a lot of people has become a really special one-on-one time for those districts that permit it. And it's super important that the student has a visual and consistent calendar every single day for what his or her day will look like. I think it's important for parents too. It's very difficult if you think about what happens in the classroom. For a student, that student comes into the class every day, and mostly there's a calendar posted, there's morning meeting time, and that student is aware all day long of what their day looks like. So I think that this process right now, I would encourage for, as maybe even on a Monday, to plan that week for your students together as a team, and for you to have a calendar and for the student to have a copy of that calendar. Did you want to add something, Chris?
I do. You're right. This is very, very important. I'm working right now to try to fit in scheduling with English as a second language teacher with a speech pathologist, and suddenly my students' days are getting filled up with a lot of check-ins. And so having it written down is really important. Things continue to evolve, and some check-in meetings with specialists and the kids still is being scheduled. So when it's finally done, it's really important to have it all laid out for the families and for the parents as well.
So this next one, this just gives you an opportunity to clarify the roles of the paraeducator and the classroom teacher. So I would encourage you to use this as a tool. Some of this is not necessarily appropriate now that we're virtual, but a lot of it is. And this just gives you a document to work off of to clarify for the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months, for however long we're engaged in this virtual process. Who's responsible for what? And there's no right and wrong, and there's no rigid lines. It's a relationship between the para, the classroom teacher, the special education teacher / case manager. But I would encourage all of you to get together in a Zoom or some collective way to have a conversation where you can go down this list and then talk about who's responsible for what as you go forward. And feel free to use this list.
I concur. It's a beautiful list, and that's a great strategy.
Okay. And again,
Can I
all of
interrupt
these,
for 1 sec?
absolutely.
Somebody has said that today is Autism Awareness Day. Choose kindness and share a smile, and wear blue to support autism.
I saw that too.
Yeah, I thought I'd just share that.
Thank you for sharing that. This is another communication document. I love this. This is included in the handouts on the webinar. But again, I just want to reinforce all of these handouts are available to you, will be made available to you. I love this document. So for every student that you work with as a paraprofessional, or every student with specific learning needs, right? We need to make a decision. Is the instructional content delivered as it's designed by the classroom teacher for the vast majority of students in the class, right? Or is there some sort of, is there accommodation that's needed? And I think Chris can talk more about accommodations and modifications. Or is there a modification to the actual curriculum? And this document allows, if it was introduced by the teacher at the beginning of the week and shared with the paraprofessional, with the case manager, and this became a communal document, the other folks that are working with the student or a small group of students would know exactly how to move forward with any modifications and accommodations. So Chris, do you want to address this a little further?
Sure. It's something I'm concerned about as well in communicating and in working with students and video conferencing and checking in with them, is to how do 504 accommodations get met in terms of distance learning. Modification, who really should be modifying the curriculum? A lot of paras are really adept at doing that. And again, like you said, it is between the classroom teacher and the case manager and the para to be able to figure out who's going to be modifying what. Does it mean doing less? Does it mean paraphrasing? Does it mean using graphic organizers? Those kinds of modifications need to be made clear, so that if a para is delivering that service with those modifications, that it's done effectively. Accommodations are things that a lot of times involve either medical or some other challenge that a student faces. Accommodations could include how I'm going to, what kind of lighting or what kind of program I'm going to be including, talking about helping kids with physical needs, helping kids with speech needs and so forth. Is there an augmented communication device that, you know, is helping them communicate more effectively? So you have to differentiate in that meeting is who's accommodating in what way and who's modifying and in what way.
Thanks, Chris. So this is just a second document to be used, just another example that you could also find in our public drive. This document is a little more appropriate for in the classroom because it speaks to a rotational, you can all have it for after we get back to the classroom too, but it's a document that allows for planning for rotation, so like a blended rotational learning style in the classroom. So you might have 3 different groups, right? And then this allows for the teacher to outline the objective, the materials needed, and then whatever the responsibilities are of the adult, whether it's a special education teacher, a para, a Title I teacher, right, who's facilitating that small group rotation, the guided practice, the independent practice, and so on. So I just thought I'd share that with you.
The classroom teacher I work with spells all that out in a daily schedule that she sends to all her families, but that would be a great tool right there to help guide the students into their either independent reading, their writing time, and then their reading instructional time.
Thanks. Okay, I'm just going to do 3 at a time. So you want to speak to this, Chris?
I do, thank you, yeah. One of the things that's concerned me throughout this whole new model is the concept of paras needing documents that guide them to the services that they're providing for their students. And I wonder in a school setting, paras often are just given an entire IEP to help them keep up with timelines and objectives and goals and so forth. But now I worry, are IEPs in people's homes, in paraeducators' homes and so forth, and what does that mean in terms of confidentiality and liability? How are they being, kind of segregated from what other things are around the house that people might have access to? So it's important that they have access to that IEP, and I don't know that most paras, if any paras, have technological access to Easy IEP, so they can access the IEP that way. Sometimes they have access to what's called IEP at a glance, and that is a component of Easy IEP. Either way, paras really need some kind of document that guides their service providing. And yet we need to be really conscious of confidentiality and liability if a para has an IEP at their home at this time.
I want to add, I did a little research yesterday to support this conversation. I asked 2 different directors of special education what their policy was with regard to paraeducators having the IEP plan at home. And interestingly, one of the special ed directors said that the paraprofessional needs to have the IEP in order to provide service, or the 504, or the behavior plan. I think the behavior plan is not necessarily as confidential. And the other special ed director was saying that IEPs are not given out to paraeducators, and that is the teacher's responsibility to outline the learning goals of the students and convey that to the paraeducator. So I just want to say that I know that it's frustrating for many of you that sometimes you can get your hands on information that you want and sometimes you can't get your hands on information. It is a district decision, and I think it warrants asking about. So if you are a paraeducator and you are feeling at a loss right now to understand the goals of your students, I think it's worth asking. Ask your special education case manager or your special education director what the policy is for your district.
That would be a great topic to add to that roles chart that you showed earlier, and that it could be written down at the bottom, access to IEP, who has it and so forth. How do I get it if I'm expected to know? I know I've presented workshops in districts where paras do not have any access to IEP. They feel that sometimes it's an issue that the district may not trust their level of confidentiality in having access to that. Sometimes IEPs are overwhelming. A number of paras that I know are not as IEP literate as they would want to be, or they might need to be more effective. You know, can they read and comprehend and implement and sustain that IEP? It's a very challenging thing. And it's a legal document, so it's a really important topic. So do ask about that with your case managers.
Thanks, Chris. Just a few more in here that maybe if you haven't addressed.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about the 504, the distant medical issues. I'm curious about how a para who is supporting a student with a behavior plan and they're video conferencing, video chatting, how that works. What techniques are you able to use remotely that can support that behavior plan? If a student is starting to be frustrated and acting out or whatever because of tension or stress or frustration with an assignment, I would love to know how people are doing it with kids with behavior plans and with 504s. You know, how it's a big topic.
I'm getting a bunch of different comments on it's not legal to bring it home. I just bring home the IEP at a glance. I just bring home the accommodations. Do either of you know what the legal rules are about that? I can research that if not.
Feel free, Anne. I mean, the two special ed directors that I spoke with, they had different responses. So I do think that it is district specific. What
See if I can find the law, and I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, I'm curious myself.
So in terms of behavior plans, just to offer something up, and then at the end, I hope that some of you will be unmuted and share what you have done to support kids and their behaviors virtually. It just occurs to me that a lot of the strategies that you use with a student with behavior issues, like timers, having a visual timer, having the student identify 2 or 3 self-regulation strategies, such as taking a break or using a fidget tool. You know, they make, I forget what it's called, but it's like this stuff that, it's gooey stuff and has a special fancy name. My son has it, actually. He's a grown-up, but he uses it anyway. Fidget tools, timers for kids, taking short breaks, setting up a reward after setting up a situation with your student. You know, we're going to work for 15 minutes. I think, Chris, you talked about this earlier when we were talking, setting up a expectation. We're going to work for 10 minutes, and then we're going to do something fun. We're going to play a quick game on the computer. We're going to work for 10 minutes, and then we're going to go talk to my cat. You know, stuff like that. I think those strategies can remain consistent. Some of the same things that you do in the classroom, you can still implement virtually.
Yeah, even something like, you know, an accommodation, sometimes written into IEPs, is a student will have access to chewing gum, just to help ground them and to, you know, get that stimulation, that oral stim stuff, so that they can focus more readily. Things like that.
Kim and Sonia just helped me out. Theraputty is the name of the putty, and slime is useful. And by the way, there's a whole lesson on how to make slime. It's a science lesson. And if you're interested in it, shoot me an email and I will send you the information on that. Or I will try to remember to upload it to our site because it's terrific.
And then you and your student can make slime together via video conference.
And then you can use it to not get distracted, to help your student not get distracted. Okay, everyone remind me, everyone at Demonstrate Success and Chris, remind me to upload the information on the slime and the putty recipe. Okay. Okay, this is a document, again, back to that communication piece. You know, we're going to be doing a lot of work independently that's not in the classroom. We don't have the luxury of reporting back orally and casually as we pass each other around how a student is doing with different assignments. So this particular document, which is Stetson Associates, in general, you can Google them. It's a person, it's an individual, has provided a lot of nice organizers. This is a really great log where the paraeducator can write in each day the student's response to the instruction if you are doing one-on-one. So how is the student's behavior? What is the modification that you used? And any comments you had on the right. And obviously on the left, there's a classroom activity, the days of the week, and all of these can be recreated. I think this particular one is a PDF. If it would be helpful to all of you, I can take the PDFs and make them into docs so you can play with them. And I'm sure that would be helpful. And again, Anne and Chris, if you can remind me at the end of the webinar, that would be fabulous.
All right.
This is another method, another organizer, and actually this one is already, and it's uploaded to the handouts. It's in doc form. It's a very simple one that has the days of the week for 3 weeks, right? So you're going vertically. And for each activity, you can't see it on the picture, but each of the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, all represents a different activity. So you can go circle that for the activity that you did and then write comments and share that with your classroom teacher, with your special education teacher, or case manager. So it's just another
at the end of every day, I end up sending a narrative to my classroom teacher and the case managers regarding what I did and so forth. And one of the things that's important is to include information about students' frame of mind, what was challenging for them, and so forth. But it's really important to have some way of documenting what happened during the day with your students, and this form works really well, I'm sure.
Okay. Chris, you want to speak to this one?
I do. Part of my workshop includes encouraging classroom teachers and paraeducators to give feedback to one another. In the teacher and SPEducator workshop, I offer this same tool to teachers and SPEducators to use to prepare for sitting down on occasion and giving feedback to paras as to how things are going. And I include it in the para toolbox as well, so that they can fill out their piece and their perspective of how things are moving along, both in terms of what are things that are going well at this time, what are challenges that are going on with students, and also maybe even with paras. I'm facing a challenge with timing, or I'm not getting a whole half hour for lunch kind of thing. But it also includes, the form also includes a section where if you are pursuing professional development or you've set professional goals, how are the classroom teachers or case managers supporting you in that? It's really important to have a facilitation form when teachers and paras meet, so that the meeting runs smoothly and quickly, and that lines of communication are kept open, which reduces conflict and stress and that kind of thing. So I always liked using feedback forms with the paras and interns that worked in my classroom. I think they valued it, and they felt that it showed that I genuinely cared about how things were going for them and for my students.
Thanks, Chris.
Can I interrupt on the legality of bringing stuff home?
Please.
Yeah.
It looks like, based on my guru, my IEP guru, you can bring documents home. The same confidentiality rules apply, but it is definitely school district specific. So your district may have different rules, but it is legal to bring them home. So that's the answer, I think.
Thank you, Anne. So this is a form for those of you that are contacting families. There's so many team members that work with these families, for kids that have particular needs. And this came from a teacher that I was speaking with last week, that this is a form that they use as a team, right? So all the service providers keep the date and who they contacted, what kind of service delivery, and any log notes and needs and things to do. So they share that communally, and they just keep it on a big log right now, so that everyone is aware of all of the different communications that are going on between the family and the different folks that are working with these students. And, I just want to go back to that for a second. These documents can be shared if you do them on Google Drive and you create them in Google Drive, or you upload a doc into Google Drive. Everyone has access, and everyone can just update it as they use it, as they communicate with families.
True.
Chris?
Yes, this is a long-term planning sheet for support persons, SP. And this all arose out of my need to let specialists, related arts teachers, art, music, PE, health, all that. It was important for everyone to be aware of what I was going to be teaching in the next quarter. And so I would always include this long-range planning sheet. I would photocopy it and put it in all the specialist boxes, all the OT, the PT, everybody, so that everybody knew what was going to be coming up in the near future. And so this was talked about topics for units of study for reading, writing, what key vocabulary terms, and before you know it, if you use this as a form of communication, you can actually have students generalizing skills outside of an OT classroom, and vice versa, that if a student is being ranged by a physical therapist, and they know that you're working on the butterfly unit, you can talk about that butterfly has just come out of the cocoon and it's starting to dry its wings. I've had speech pathologists be grateful to have this information, because they can start chunking words, or they can start helping students preview material. Speech pathologists really value that as well. So I really like that long-range planning sheet, and you can encourage classroom teachers to create it and share it with you, so that you can do a little preview and get a little idea of what's coming down the pike for your student.
Thanks, Chris.
This is a big one.
Go for it.
Yeah, it's just another thing that I worry about is how, especially middle and high school students that have tests and quizzes and exams, how they submit that. A lot of times it's done online, I know, but what if it's not? How do you verify it? How do you submit work? Do you take a photograph of it? Do they send it to you or via video? You look at it with them, and then how do they submit it? Do you just check off and let the classroom teacher know that this student finished this assignment? Who's grading it? How is that happening? A lot of times you have to capitalize on that technology piece just to continue to share information, share that progress and so forth with teachers and case managers. Sometimes the teacher is getting information about how a student is doing. It's very helpful if they share that information with you as well.
Thanks. Okay.
We've had a couple questions on supporting the paras who are working with behavior the behavior management part of students. How do you see their role?
How do we see their role? Well, I think that their role remains consistent. I think we talked a little bit about strategies for behavior management that we use in the classroom that we can continue to use virtually. I also feel that setting some goals with parents at this point for behavior management and working as a team with parents is a very important way to expand that work right now, because really our classrooms are our homes, and in some ways we are teaming with parents right now, and parents are seeing those behaviors in their homes. And anything we can do to create the consistency between the expectation in school and the expectation and follow through at home, I think would be very useful at this time. That said, we can't expect the same level of behavior at home and at school because everyone knows that for the most part, students save their frustration and their behaviors for home often. So I think setting a couple of goals with parents and monitoring those goals, reinforcing those goals, and communicating around those goals, I think is a very excellent way to expand that role. Chris, did you want to respond?
Sure, and I think it's a beautiful thought, but it's very difficult that, parents are struggling right now with so many things, and suddenly their kid is home all the time. And, do parents have the structure in place to hold kids accountable for getting schoolwork done, for getting chores done, for getting anything like that done? It's very challenging. I know many parents are very frustrated right now. They never intended to have to be a teacher for their student, and suddenly they're doing that, and it's just they're put in a very tough position often by kids because of kids' behaviors.
Yep, I agree. Okay, Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, working with different kids, and I'm sure it's the same with high schoolers and middle schoolers as well as what I'm experiencing as an elementary para. It was very important for me to create an area that was had places where I could lock any documents or anything away in terms of confidentiality. But I had to set up a little office space for myself that made sure that all the materials and all the supplies I needed were within arm's reach, just so I could access them, not just when I'm working with kids, but when I'm trying to communicate with a classroom teacher or with a case manager. So it was important to have a consistent location. Supplies, I need to have whatever documents I might need. If I'm a high school para, I want a syllabus for each class. I want all kinds of calendars and schedules that I know are coming up for activities or assignments. It's important to have those things at the ready. And I even things like making sure you have a calculator that you can use with a student or whatever. It's vitally important to have, especially at the middle and high school, to have access to a student's academic platform, Black Book, Google Classroom, that kind of thing. It's a way for paras to continue to monitor what assignments are being completed and being turned in, knowing which ones are late in being turned in, so you can work with kids to get late assignments completed in a more timely manner. It's just very important to be able to track kids' grades and be able to go back and say, oh, you didn't do as well on this last assignment. What can we do to review? Kind of thing. So keeping yourself organized is really important.
I just wanted to show you this quick, we've had 3 or 4 or 4 or 5 different Google Classroom webinars. And I wanted to let all of you know, in case you haven't been on one of our webinars yet, that these are all recorded and posted in our YouTube channel. So there's probably 15 webinars waiting for you, 4 or 5 of which are directly address Google Classroom. And in Google Classroom, I want to just give a quick overview. There is, you post all the classwork, you can upload. This is very broad, and I'm not going to go into Google Classroom right now, but I wanted you all to see that if you're not doing this already, right? So classroom teachers are able to create a classroom, right, where they upload assignments, upload materials, upload organizers, support materials, anything that the students might need. And there's a tab next to classwork, where you can actually invite people And the teacher invites students, but also invites folks in as teachers. So many paraeducators are being invited in to the Google Classroom as a co-teacher. And I would encourage you, if you haven't already asked to be invited in as a co-teacher, that it is essential that you do become a co-teacher so that you can keep track of what's going on in the classroom. And I think that it will be very beneficial for you. Okay.
Can I just interrupt again?
Please.
We only have a couple more minutes. I just wanted to say this, that we've gotten a few things about, I feel helpless, I'm not able to do anything, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to encourage people to be kind to themselves, because this really is, I think everybody feels helpless, or I feel helpless half the time with this. Our jobs have all changed, and we're all trying to figure out how we can help these kids, and we want to help the kids. And we know that this group of kids that we're talking about today, they're at most risk for falling behind. And, if they don't want to participate, how do we get them motivated? How can we connect with them? I mean, it's new for everybody. So be kind to yourself. Go get them. Well, you can't get a massage, but I don't know, eat ice cream, have a martini, something. Be kind. Yes, we're all feeling that way.
I agree.
Go for a walk.
Yeah, go for a walk.
Hey,
I have a little plug for this. So let's keep going.
Karen,
Yes, Mike.
and so I just want to say two things. One is we don't necessarily advocate drinking, but
I'm
do
sorry.
that's okay. But the other thing I just want to point out is that not to say we shouldn't be working as hard as we are in New Hampshire, but New Hampshire seems to be leading the country in converting to virtual learning.
Yeah.
So when we're comparing ourselves to other people within our own state, we may feel we're not doing enough, but realize that we are all doing more than what it seems to be 99% of states out there in the country. So we should all feel proud. It doesn't mean we should lower our efforts. We should keep up the great work, but we should feel very good about what we're doing here.
True.
Thanks so much, Mike and Ann. Thank you.
I'd like to add to that. Mike and I have been monitoring all the questions and comments. There have been tons of great ideas that people have passed on, and a lot of questions that people are asking. Many people are asking the same question. And I just want to reassure you that all these questions will be answered, the ones that we can answer, and they'll be posted, and we're going to send you a link. So you'll see everybody's ideas, you'll see answers to your questions and other people's questions.
And I also want to say that we are doing another webinar tomorrow that's focusing on special education in particular. So for those of you that have questions around kids with higher needs, that would be a great webinar for you to attend tomorrow. We are going to go over probably by about 8 minutes to 10 minutes. If you need to log off, it's fine. We have a recording that you will have access to, so do not worry. So just don't worry about that. Okay, Chris, I'm going to talk a little bit about keeping kids organized.
Yes, the very first video conference I had with each of my kids involved talking with them about getting a space set aside for themselves for maximizing learning. And it was important that they have calendars and schedules, that I encourage them to find an isolated, more remote and quiet learning space where the student and I could work together. And one of the students was given his father's office in the home, and that was a beautiful setup for that kid. And he ended up having everything he needed, his scissors and rulers and calculators and so forth. Another student I'm working with them in their kitchen, and people are coming and going. Another one was working on his mom's bed with me, and it's like, it varies from household to household, but it's really, it maximizes learning opportunities if there can be a proper area that is outfitted with supplies, a box with the folders that have come home with paperwork that kids need to work on and assignments they need to do. It's really important that kids are as organized as you are. And so I got myself organized and started thinking about the fact that kids need to, so I always check in with them. Okay, where are you going to be meeting with me? What does it look like? Do you have all the supplies that you need?
Thanks.
Learning tools, really important. When we think about high school kids, do you have a grading or graphing calculator nearby if you need one? Do you have, protractor? Do you have a compass, things like that? What are students with augmented communication devices? Obviously, that's going to be necessary to have on hand, as well as all the documents that students need to successfully work on and then complete assignments. So getting them organized is as vitally important as it is for the parents to be organized as well.
We're going to move on to maximizing learning time. I want to move through this so that we can get done by 10 after, so that folks don't feel like, they're missing their day. So Chris, can you speak to some of these in terms of maximizing learning time you have with kids?
Yes, I always check in first. Hey, how are things going? How are you doing? What are you struggling with? And at that point, I can then do what I call triage. I can begin to prioritize what are the most important things that the student and I can work on given the time constraints of our scheduled time before I move on and he or she moves on as well. A lot of times I use split screen. Sometimes we share screen. That sharing screens is really, really nice, and it's very important to be able to do. I don't know that all districts and all schools have that that platform that they can, but for a student to be on some kind of a tech program that they're using to support math, to be able to see their screen and be able to manipulate the mouse on that is very, very helpful. Again, audio versus AV. AV is definitely the way to go, but a lot of things can be done, with audio. The students can take videos of themselves and send it to you or send it to the classroom teacher. I always work to set up the stage and get sometimes a brain warm up, like a little riddle or maybe a joke or something, just to kind of get it going. It's important to be obviously organized and prepared, and that a learning routine has been established from the get-go so that they know that every day this is our time and we're gonna get some stuff done. And talked about the advantages and the challenges of one-on-one versus group sessions. I haven't had a group session, and I would love to see one in action. It must be very cool. It's also important to take breaks, and if you're working with a student, take a break and play tic-tac-toe, play hangman, play something that just keeps them with you but breaks it all up. I even tell them, hey, run in the kitchen and get an apple. Let's take a snack break, something like that. And it just gives them a moment to just escape for a second and come back. Go take out the trash for your mom, something like that. But taking breaks is really important.
Chris, a quick question. Someone asked how you do a split or shared screen. How are you doing that?
Our school uses a program called Teams, Teams, and we access Teams, which is the video conferencing platform, and we access it through our Schoology account, Schoology platform that is being used to share documents and schedules and so forth between kids and classroom teachers and paraeducators. And it allows us to look at each other. And so I can also split the screen up so that I can see I can see them, but I can also see myself. But then the shared screen is really nice because you click on a button and you can see what they're looking at on their computer. And if it is, the classic is a math program called Zern that my district uses, and the student is struggling in one of the components of Zern, they can put up Zern and I can see what they're looking at, and I can even then grab control of the cursor to be able to say, oh, look, you didn't add these numbers correctly. or you didn't line these up, or, oh, wait, you need a line that's parallel. You made one that was vertical, kind of thing. So it's very helpful.
And you can use Zoom, you can use GoToMeeting, you can use Google Meet. So there's other
True.
methods as well. There's other tools. And these are just some of the strategies that Chris spoke to me about when we were planning for the webinar. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, especially number 2, allowing processing time. You know, you ask a question and sometimes it's really hard, and it's something I still work at, is asking a question and then sitting back and waiting for that kiddo to process and to pull ideas together before they respond. It's very easy for us to just keep peppering them with questions or to paraphrase over and over again. So that's a really good one. Some teachers and some paraeducators are allowing students who are reluctant writers or that kind of thing to be able to speed up the process by scribing for them, and they'll ask questions and the student will give an answer, and the paraeducator writes down the answer. It just saves a lot of time. If students are have quick writing, have good solid writing skills and can write more quickly, then maybe you don't need to do that. I back and forth with my students. Sometimes I'll read the direction. I'll say, okay, the next one you read the direction. It just kind of takes some of the pressure off. And I always try to end each session with, okay, what did we get done today? You really killed it in this. Hey, this was a struggle, but look, we overcame that. And I try to let them know what might be coming tomorrow so that they can just kind of wrap their brain around it. Sometimes I'll throw out a vocabulary word or that kind of thing.
A preview, that's great. So I did want to just let you know about 2 pieces of technology that I think would be particularly helpful for anyone who's working with students that have particular needs or need one-on-one working through problems together. Two different pieces of technology, and I titled the slide "Leverage New and Old Technology" because I also think that if technology is overwhelming to the student, then use the technology that they're familiar with, which brings the phone in, right? Some of these things, so you can create voice recordings on your phone. You can do Skype on your phone or FaceTime on your phone, right? If that's what a kid has to work with, then work with what they have to decrease anxiety if that's necessary. But I did want to just show you a couple of apps. There's virtual whiteboards that you can actually project your screen and invite the student into the whiteboard, and the 2 of you can interact together as if you're standing in front of a whiteboard.
Neat.
The easiest one is called AWW, and because of time, I'm not going to go in there right now, but I will tell you that it is so easy. You click that link, and it opens up the whiteboard, and you're allowed to invite somebody else, and in 15 minutes you will become proficient with it. So that's a really fun thing. It might be super engaging for your kids. I visualize it as something that you could do word work with, something that you can work through math problems with. I think it's excellent. The second one is Vocaroo. And it's very simple. Again, you click on that link, and in front of you is just a screen that is a recording. And you press the red button, and the student can talk into it and tell them, instead of writing an essay or a written response, a student can send you through this a recorded oral presentation of their answer or their response or whatever they want to. Okay, so I would encourage you. I just want to give you these 2 apps. I wanted to keep it narrow because it's overwhelming, but I think that when you get off the webinar, if you want to go play with those 2, it might be very useful for you. Okay, whoops. All right. So I just wanted to talk with all of you and remind you, for those of you that are unaware, there are those recorded webinars in Google Classroom. That is the link to our YouTube channel where all of them sit waiting for you. In addition, there's a lot of other webinars that I think would be very useful for you. The math and ELA activities for home are very user-friendly for kids to do at home with their parents, at home with you virtually, things that they can maintain on their own. The visual engagement tools to use with students, that's just, all about the tools that you can use, such as Google Meets, Screencastify, and the tools that you can use to be one-on-one or in a small group with your students and interacting visually with them. There's 3 Google Classroom webinars. There is a webinar that's recorded that I sent to someone earlier through the questions app. There's on EL learners for those of you that are working with English language learners. And then for every grade span, so kindergarten, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then middle school and high school, there are some webinars with virtual ideas, ideas for virtual instruction. So I would encourage you to go to this link, go to our YouTube channel, and treat yourself to some professional development.
Yeah, that's also it's also important to know that there are a lot of resources out there that you can use with your student. Like a local television station here in New Hampshire has a meteorologist who creates a daily meteorology lesson, and I think that's very cool. Aquariums are offering things. NASA, NOAA, so many things that, and another thing that parents can do is if they're looking for support, that they can enter the district's curriculum technology support system for writing instruction using 6 traits of writing, or FOSS Science and Eureka Math, or all the different math programs, Everyday Math. They have technology available that you can use with your kids, and you exploring that is very justifiable for professional development.
Thank you. Someone asked if the sites that I was listing earlier need to be approved, and I just sent an email a question response to say that yes, you should definitely check with your administrator, your special ed administrator, your principal, your whoever it is that would be appropriate to make sure that they are indeed approved. Okay, our very last piece is about fostering student peace of mind. It's last and probably most important. And also fostering your own peace of mind. So if you stick around rather for another few minutes, just 2 or 3 minutes, then we'll talk a little bit about both of those things. So Chris, why don't you go for it?
Yeah, I begin every single check-in just chatting it up with the student, getting a sense, and it's things that, hey, what are you doing? What did you do after you left me yesterday? Did you go for a walk? Are you feeling stressed? It's really important for me to try to get a sense, not just at that moment how a student is feeling, but just generally, how are things going there in the house? You know, I don't pry, but I do try to make sure that I get a sense that, okay, student seems happy and secure and smiling. They're obviously feeling safe and secure. They've got good well-being going on for emotionally. There have been reports of some students from parents saying when he got frustrated about the math yesterday, he had a breakdown. And so I always try to set the stage by saying, hey buddy, when things start getting tough and you start being frustrated by work, we want you to just put it off to the side and we'll attack it next time we have a check-in. Don't take that with you. And it's important to make sure that I'm rebuilding the rapport and the trust that I had with them as a classroom pair, because I was sitting next to them and I was joking with them and so forth. And then all of a sudden there was a week and a half, almost 2 weeks, where we weren't seeing one another. And I worked hard to reestablish that rapport and the trust that was important to us when we were working together, and now we're not able to do that as well. If I notice that a student is having an issue with stress or tension, or if they're sad or they're depressed or frustrated, It's important that I communicate that to the people that need to know in terms of counselors, classroom teachers, case managers, maybe the principal. And I sometimes find that I would refer a student to a specialist. Hey, why don't you give Ms. So-and-so a call, who might be the school counselor, or send her an email or something and have her check in with you via video, maybe just to reassure and to again, with them rebuilding that rapport and that trust that they have. So it's important to get a gauge, use a gauge to find out where they are, report concerns, and then refer a student, or sometimes just go right to the school counselor and say, hey, would you reach out to Mrs. McGillicuddy or to whomever, because they seem to be struggling because of their child's behavior, or their child, says you're not my teacher or whatever. So fostering this well-being is really, really important right now. We also need to take care of that for ourselves. We need to make sure we're checking in with ourselves. How am I feeling? Exactly. Look at that. That's perfect.
So
with yourself,
somebody asked earlier in the webinar, I have 4 kids at home. Any advice for me? And this image is everything right now, right? When you're on the plane and they tell you to put your own oxygen mask on first before helping those around you, I cannot emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
So it is very
deep
important.
cleansing breath.
And it is very, very, very important that you put routines into your own day, that you set boundaries around your day. I work from this to this hour. This hour I take a break. This hour is the day, every day, where I'm going to go for a walk or do some exercise. And definitely take care of yourself before you take care, and your family before you take care of those outside. And it's just super important right now because it's hard to draw those boundaries. To close the webinar, I want to share this cute video with you about being mindful during this time. It's a really nice way to take care of yourself. The video is about a minute long, and it really gives you some hints about how on your day-to-day, moment-to-moment, to take care of yourself.
Hey, this is Pete Doctor. I'm walking home from work. It's been a kind of a stressful day. Tons of things that are going over and over in my head. But I think the point of this exercise is not to go inward, but to pay attention to stuff out there. So I'm going to try to do that. Clouds are really intense. A lot of interesting streaky shapes. That's really not cumulus. They're the opposite ones. They're sort of streaky, which I forgot the names of. And even as I say, I'm tempted to look it up on Google, but I'm not gonna. Sounds everywhere. I think of just traffic, but just heard someone whistle. Sound of leaves. Kind of comforting, that sound. And I smell spaghetti. Actually, a lot of smells beyond the spaghetti. Now I'm getting candles, some sort of like lavender. I'm used to walking rather fast, but the more I start to notice, I kind of slow down and investigate things. Instead of focusing on outward stuff, I usually go inward. But I find then I can get home and realize I didn't actually see anything. I was just in my head the whole time. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes of walking now. My head is not buzzing with so many worries and thoughts. I guess I feel lighter, more clear-headed now than I did when I started.
Okay. So I just wanted to play that for you. And that's really about mindfulness and keeping your perspective and staying connected with the things around you that don't have to do with your school, that don't have to do with your work, that don't have to do with your stress, and don't have to do with coronavirus. So I would encourage you all to take good care. And if anybody wants to, I'm happy to open up the floor if anybody wants to raise their hand to ask any questions or contribute anything. I know that people are starting to get off the webinar and it's gone over. So let me really quickly just check in with those people that have raised their hands. I think it's Amra. Did you have something that you wanted to contribute?
No, not really.
Okay, that's okay, Amra. Thanks for coming.
No, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I think Andrew, did you have something that you wanted to offer to the group? So I think what's happened is people have raised their hands throughout the webinar and then they may or may not still be on. I am gonna unmute, I think Binu, do you have something you wanted to ask or contribute?
I'm all set for now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't really see any more, so we're gonna close the webinar up. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Chris, for all that you've contributed and everything we've learned from you. I will post everything to our public site. You will have access to all of the recordings. I will take all the PDFs and turn them into working documents. I will upload any other resources that are requested in the Q&A. We will post the Q&A and write in answers as best we can where you didn't get answers. I'm so grateful to all of you for attending today, and go forth and have a wonderful day. I do want to just let you know this is the schedule for our upcoming webinars. You can go to our website at demonstratedsuccess.com. In the upper right corner, we have workshops and webinars. And then there is the drop down, it says virtual teaching in New Hampshire, and you can register right there from our site to any of our webinars that are happening tomorrow and in the week coming up.
Yeah, and I would also like to thank everyone for participating today and joining us. I hope it was meaningful and substantive for you, gave you some good ideas, and I appreciate the fact that I was given a chance to work with you, Karen, and that's been awesome. I encourage people, if they like what they've seen, to like my Facebook page, Parapotential Facebook, as well as visiting my website at www.parapotential.com. and connect with me.
Great, Chris, thanks. We had a student performance yesterday, Sam Robbins, and we are going to continue to have student performances on Wednesdays on our Facebook page. So just so you know, keep an eye out for that. And that's it. And here's our contact information for any of you that would like to get in touch with us. And we look forward to hearing from you, and thank you again. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you all.
Karen, can you hold on one second? Some people are they want to enter in some ideas. So if we just don't log off for a few minutes.
Yeah.
If anybody has ideas, please enter them in the question department.
Yes.
If you have more questions, we'll post those with the rest of the stuff we are posting. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, definitely. Okay. I think we've stopped. So I'm going to end the webinar now. Take care, everybody.